I first noticed him on a Wednesday evening. It had been a long day at work, and I was walking home alone. My headphones in, my mind somewhere else. The streets were quiet, the city humming in the background. Then, that feeling, the creeping sensation of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder. A man was walking about 30 feet behind me, tall, dressed in dark clothes, hood up. His posture was relaxed, casual, as if he was just another pedestrian heading home. I turned back around and kept walking. It was probably nothing. But when I crossed the street, so did he. When I took a left down my usual shortcut, he followed. My stomach tightened. I took out my headphones, listening for his footsteps. They matched mine, just slightly delayed, like he was trying not to be obvious. I slowed down. So did he. A spike of fear shot through me. I wasn't imagining this. He was following me. My apartment was 2 blocks away. Too far to sprint, too close to call for help. I needed to lose him. So I ducked into a corner store. I grabbed a random snack from the shelf, pretending to browse. The cashier barely looked up. Through the store window, I watched the man walk past. He didn't even glance inside. I exhaled, my heart still hammering. Probably just a coincidence. Maybe he hadn't been following me at all. I waited a few more minutes, then headed home. The rest of the night was normal. I locked my door. I ate dinner. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I still checked the peephole before going to bed, just in case. A few days passed, and I convinced myself I had overreacted. Then, on Saturday morning, I found the first note. It was taped to my front door, just a single piece of paper folded in half. I opened it with shaking hands. Nice apartment. That was it. No name, no explanation, just 2 words. My stomach turned to ice. Someone had been at my door. I checked the people, then my phone. No missed calls, no texts. I looked around the hallway empty. Maybe a prank, a stupid joke. I crumpled the note and locked my door, but I kept the lights on that night. The second note came 2 days later. I had just come home from work when I saw it, taped in the exact same spot. I almost didn't want to open it, but I had to. You forgot to lock the window. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around, my eyes darting to the living room window. It was shut, locked. Hadn't it been? I checked every window in the apartment. The locks were all in place. But doubt crawled up my spine. Had I left one open? Had someone been inside? I bought a security camera that night. Just a cheap one, something I could set up by the door. If someone came near my apartment again, I'd have proof. I checked the footage the next morning. At 3:14 a.m., the screen flickered. For a few seconds, nothing. Just the hallway outside my door. Then, a figure moved into frame. Tall, dark hoodie, standing just outside my door. He didn't knock, didn't try to break in. He just stood there. Then, slowly, he leaned toward the camera. I could barely breathe. His face was hidden, the hood casting a deep shadow, but I could see his mouth, and he was smiling. Then, he stepped back, took something from his pocket, and taped a note to my door. I shut off the footage. My hands were shaking. I wasn't imagining things. He was real, and he knew where I lived. I called the police. They came, took a report, looked at the footage, but they told me what I already knew. He hadn't broken in. He hadn't threatened me. There wasn't much they could do. Call us if he comes back, they said, as if I had a choice. For the next few nights, I barely slept. Every noise made my skin crawl. Every shadow felt like him. The third note arrived on Thursday. You look tired. I nearly threw up. I hadn't left my apartment in 2 days. Hadn't even opened the blinds. How did he know? That night, I sat in the dark, knife in hand, staring at the door. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to catch him. At 2:58 a.m., the camera flickered. I leaned forward, heart pounding. The hallway was empty. Then, the lights outside my door went out. The screen turned pitch black. I jumped up, grabbing my phone, my pulse roaring in my ears. The power was still on in my apartment. Then, the hallway lights flickered back on, and he was inside the building, standing at the end of the hall, facing my door. I could see him now, clear as day. No longer just a shadow in the night. His hood was down, his face was wrong, uncanny, too smooth, too still, and he was staring right at the camera. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and waved. I ran. I didn't call the cops. I just ran out of my apartment, down the stairs, onto the street. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called my friend, Mark. He let me crash at his place, said I could stay as long as I needed. For the first time in days, I felt safe. The next morning, I got a text from my own number. "Where did you go?" I dropped my phone. Mark told me to call the police again. I did. They went to my apartment, and they found something. Not him, but the crawl space. Behind my bedroom closet, it was small, cramped, almost invisible if you didn't know where to look. Inside, they found a blanket, empty food wrappers, scraps of paper, and one more note. A short one, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I hate when you leave, but don't worry, I'll always find you. It's been a week. I'm not going back to my apartment. I don't think I ever will. Mark says I should move, change my number, start fresh somewhere else. I think he's right." But last night, in his apartment, I woke up to a sound. A soft tap, 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 like someone knocking on glass. I turned over in bed, and my stomach dropped. The closet door was slightly open, and in the darkness inside, I saw him, smiling, waiting. The first time I heard him, I thought it was my imagination. I was in bed, half asleep, when a whisper crept into the silence of my apartment. "Hey." It was so soft I barely registered it. A breeze through the vent? A dream lingering at the edge of consciousness? Then I heard it again. "Hey." My eyes snapped open. I lay still, holding my breath, ears straining. The apartment was silent. The kind of deep, late-night silence where even the hum of the fridge seems too loud. Had it come from inside my room? Or from my phone? I reached for it on my nightstand, heart pounding. The screen was dark, no notifications, no open apps. Just as I was about to put it down, the whisper came again. "I see you." I nearly dropped the phone, because this time, I knew where it was coming from. The speaker. I scrambled up, unlocking the screen. Nothing was playing. No calls, no messages. I turned my phone off completely and threw it across the room. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. Sleep deprivation, stress, maybe even a dream that bled into reality. I turned my phone back on. Everything seemed normal, until I checked my contacts. There was a new entry, Whisper Man. No number, no profile picture, just a name. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach twisting into knots. Had someone hacked my phone? A prank? Hesitantly, I pressed call. The line rang once, then an answer. Breathing. Not heavy, not ragged, just slow, steady breathing. I hung up immediately and deleted the contact. For the rest of the day, I tried to put it out of my mind. It had to be a joke, a weird glitch, maybe a virus. I reset my phone, ran a security scan. Everything was fine. Then that night, just as I was about to sleep, a message popped up on my screen. "Unknown number. You shouldn't have done that." I didn't reply. I shut my phone off again. But the next morning, there was a new text. "Check your videos." My hands felt numb as I opened my gallery. There was a new video, recorded at 3:14 a.m. I pressed play. At first, there was only darkness, the grainy, low-light fuzz of a phone recording in the dark. Then, a voice, my voice, murmuring something unintelligible, whispering. Then, a movement. The camera tilted, shaking slightly, and I saw myself, sitting up in bed, eyes open, mouth moving, but no sound. Then, slowly, I turned my head and looked directly into the camera. The video cut off. I dropped my phone, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I hadn't recorded that. I hadn't woken up last night. Had I? I started leaving my phone in another room at night. I wouldn't look at it in the morning. I wouldn't engage. Days passed. Nothing happened. No texts. No videos. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Then, on Friday night, as I unlocked my apartment door, something clattered to the floor. A key. I picked it up, my pulse roaring in my ears. It was identical to my apartment key. Same grooves, same ridges, but it wasn't mine. And attached to it was a small note, for later. I bolted the door. I checked every window, every closet. I barely slept, because there was only one explanation. Someone had been inside my apartment, and they wanted me to know. The next morning, I knocked on my neighbor's door. Mrs. Holloway, an old woman who had lived here for 20 years. She peered at me through the chain lock. "Did you see anyone near my apartment last night?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She frowned. "No, dear." Then, after a pause, "But I did hear you talking." My mouth went dry. "You, heard me talking?" She nodded. "Around 3 a.m. you were whispering something. I figured you were on the phone." I forced a smile. "Right, must have been." I went back to my apartment, legs shaking. Because I hadn't been on the phone, and I definitely hadn't been whispering. I decided to leave, pack a bag, stay with a friend, just for a few nights. As I grabbed my phone, it vibrated in my hand. A call, no caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. For a few seconds, silence. Then, "You don't have to leave." The voice was right next to my ear, like someone was standing behind me. I spun around. No one was there. The call ended. Then a text appeared. "See you tonight." I ran. I didn't go to a friend's house. I went to a motel, somewhere far, somewhere new. I locked the door, blocked the windows. I took a shower, trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I wiped the steam off the bathroom mirror, I froze, because my reflection was wrong. It wasn't mimicking me exactly. My head was tilted just slightly. My mouth was curved, almost a smirk. And then, my reflection whispered. But the sound didn't come from the mirror. It came from behind me. "Hey." I turned around, and the lights went out. I don't remember what happened next. When I woke up, the motel door was wide open. My phone was on the floor, screen cracked, the battery drained at 3:14 a.m. There was one last text waiting for me. Just 4 words. "You let me in." I left that day, changed numbers, moved cities. For a while, everything was fine. Then, last night, my new phone buzzed. A notification. New contact added. Whisperman. I deleted it immediately, but it didn't matter. Because as I lay in bed in the deep silence of the night, I heard it again, right next to my ear. "Hey, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just say it outright. I'm being watched." I don't mean in the vague paranoid way people say they feel when they walk alone at night. I mean someone is watching me, deliberately, constantly, and they want me to know it. I don't know who they are. I don't know why. But it started 3 months ago, and I think it's getting worse. My name's Daniel Carter. I'm 29, single, and I live in a quiet apartment complex in Chicago. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom unit on the 4th floor. I work as a freelance web designer, which means I spend a lot of time indoors, alone. At first, I thought I was imagining things. A glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. A shape outside my window that vanished the second I turned. But I never heard footsteps. Never heard a door open or close. I told myself it was nothing, just my brain playing tricks on me. I was wrong. The first time I knew for sure, it was around midnight. I was up late, working on a client's website. My apartment was dim, the only light coming from my laptop screen. Then I felt it, that heavy, crawling sensation of being watched. I turned toward the window and froze. There was a man standing outside. No expression, no movement, just standing there, staring at me. At first, my mind rejected it. I live on the 4th floor. There's no balcony, no fire escape. No way someone could be there. But he was. His face was wrong. Not distorted, not monstrous, just off. His eyes were too wide. His head tilted at a slight angle, and he had this thin, stretched out grin, like he was enjoying something. I blinked. He was gone. Not like he moved away, just gone. I sat there, heart pounding, eyes locked on the empty window. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I had been staring at the screen too long. I forced a laugh, shook my head, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. Days passed. Nothing happened. I started to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then, one night, as I was brushing my teeth, I glanced up at the bathroom mirror and saw him, standing in my bedroom, just behind me. I spun around, my stomach lurching. No one there. The closet door was open, just a crack. My breath hitched. Slowly, I approached it. My fingers trembled as I reached out and yanked it open. Empty, but something was there. A smell, like sweat and something rotting. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I checked my phone out of habit. There was a new notification. One new album created. Him. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't made any new albums. Heart pounding, I opened it. There were dozens of photos of me, sleeping, working, sitting on my couch, all taken from inside my apartment. The final image made my stomach churn. A close-up of my face, taken at an angle that suggested whoever took it was inches away. I dropped my phone. My skin was crawling. Someone had been inside my apartment while I slept, while I worked, while I sat there thinking I was alone. I called the police. The officer who arrived was in his mid-40 seconds, tired looking. He took my statement, glanced at my phone, then shrugged. Could be a hacker, he said. A prank. I stared at him. A prank? People get hacked all the time, sir. I'd recommend changing your passwords. I wanted to scream. What about the man in my window? He sighed. No signs of forced entry. No proof anyone was inside. He handed me his card. If anything else happens, call us. Otherwise, be careful what you download. That was it. I changed my locks that night, twice. Then I installed a security camera. It made me feel better, for a while. Nothing happened for a week. 2 weeks, I started to feel normal again. Then, one morning, I found something outside my door. A key. Not my apartment key, but identical. Attached was a small note. For later. I slammed the door, heart hammering. I checked the security footage. The hallway had been empty all night. No one came. No one left. But the key was there. That night, I barely slept. At 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. New video recorded. With shaking hands, I opened the security app. The footage was grainy, taken from my front door camera. For the first few hours, nothing. Then, at 3:12 a.m., something changed. The hallway lights flickered. Then, a man stepped into frame. The man, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. He stood directly in front of my door. But here's the thing. The camera never caught him arriving. One frame, empty hallway. The next, he's just there. Then, he looked up, straight into the camera, and smiled. Not a normal smile, a slow, stretched-out grin. Then, he lifted his hand and knocked. 3 times. I stared at the footage, my skin crawling, because I never heard it. Not last night, not ever. And when the video ended, he never left. I don't live there anymore. I packed a bag and left that night, drove for hours. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know how he got in, or why the police never found anything. But last night, in my new apartment, I woke up to knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, a whisper, right outside my door. You can't run, Daniel. I haven't opened the door, and I don't think I ever will. But I don't know if that matters anymore, because when I checked my phone this morning, there was a new album, titled Found You. It started with the feeling of being watched. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just paranoia, the way you sometimes feel like someone is staring at you in a crowded place, only to turn around and see no one there. But this was different. It didn't happen in public and bustling areas full of people. It happened in the solitude of my own home. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a quiet building in the suburbs. No security cameras, no doorman, just a small complex where the neighbors keep to themselves. Perfect for someone like me who enjoys privacy. Or at least I used to. The first time I noticed it, I was brushing my teeth, my eyes flicking up to the bathroom mirror. Through the half-open door, I could see my living room beyond, dimly lit by a street lamp outside. And there just barely was a shadow. Not a defined figure, not a shape I could describe. Just a slightly darker patch in the already darkened room. I turned quickly, stepping out into the living room, but nothing was there. The door was locked, the window shut. Just my mind playing tricks on me. That's what I told myself. The feeling didn't go away. At work, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder. On the bus ride home, I felt eyes on me. At night, in my apartment, my skin prickled with the distinct sensation of being watched. Then, one evening, I saw him. I had been working late and caught the last bus home. As I stepped off at my stop, I noticed a man standing by the streetlight across the road. He was partially obscured by the dim light, his features blurred in the hazy glow. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing my apartment building. I hesitated for a moment, but then shook it off. Homeless, maybe, or just someone waiting for a ride. I kept walking, refusing to let the unease settle in my chest. When I reached the entrance to my building, I chanced one last look. He was still there, and he was staring directly at me. A chill ran down my spine as I hurried inside, locking the door behind me. I peeked out from my window, heart pounding. The street was empty. The next few days were normal, or as normal as they could be when you're constantly second-guessing your own senses. I told myself I was imagining things, that my overworked brain was conjuring patterns that didn't exist, that I was seeing coincidences, not connection, until the tapping started. The first time, it was subtle, a soft click against my bedroom window late at night. I live on the third floor, so it was probably a tree branch swaying in the wind. That's what I told myself, until it happened again and again. One night, I stayed up, waiting. Around 2 a.m., the sound came, a distinct, deliberate tap. My breath caught in my throat. I turned over in bed, facing the window. My curtains were drawn, but through the thin fabric, I saw something, a handprint, pressed against the glass from the outside. I reported it the next day, of course. The landlord was skeptical, but agreed to check the building security. He found nothing, no signs of forced entry. No way anyone could have climbed up to my window. Just my paranoia, he assured me. Still, I wasn't satisfied. I changed my locks, double-checked the windows, and started sleeping with the lights on. The feeling of unease didn't leave me. A week later, something even worse happened. As I was leaving for work, I reached into my bag for my keys. They weren't there. Frowning, I went back inside and searched everywhere. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I checked the outside of my apartment door. And there, in the middle of the hallway floor, was my missing key. Someone had taken it and then put it back. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up sitting in my living room with every light in the apartment turned on, my phone clutched in my hands, ready to call the police at the first sign of anything unusual. At around 3 a.m., my exhaustion got the better of me. My eyes drifted shut. Then I woke up. But something was wrong. The lights were off. I was sure I had left them on. My pulse thundered in my ears. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Inside my apartment. I didn't move. I barely even breathed myself. My body locked in place as the sound came closer, closer. It was just behind the couch where I sat. Then, my phone screen lit up with an incoming call. My stomach dropped. The caller ID read, "Unknown number." And that's when I knew. Whoever had been watching me, stalking me, tormenting me was inside my apartment right now. I don't remember much of what happened next. I must have screamed. I must have run. I remember the rush of adrenaline as I threw open my apartment door and bolted down the hallway, not stopping until I reached the street, gasping for air. The police found nothing when they arrived. My apartment was locked from the inside, no signs of forced entry, no trace of an intruder. But my phone? There was one new message from an unknown number, and all it said was, "You can't run from me. I see you." I moved out the next day, left everything behind. But even now, in my new city, in my new apartment, I still feel it. At night, I sometimes wake up to the sound of soft tapping against my window, and I know he's still watching.